Baruchim Aboim B'Shem Hashem. This evening, we have the special and unique opportunity to support Torah in Eretz Yisrael. Chinuch Atzmai has been authorized and recommended by virtually all Gedolei Yisrael. The best way for us to give chizuk to Bnei Yisrael in Eretz Yisrael, now especially in this precarious matzav, is with our generous funds for chinuch as well as our tefillos. When the Gadol Ador, Rabbi Yoshev Zatzal, was asked his opinion specifically of Chinuch Atzmai by the Rosh Yeshiva, who should have a refuah shalema, Rav Feldman, he quoted the pasuk Be'er Chafaru Asorim, alluding to the fact that from its very beginning, the well of Torah in Eretz Yisrael was established and encouraged by all Gedolim in every Tekufa. Now, B'li Ayin Hara, it is a network of over 100,000 Talmidim and Talmidos and 263 separate schools. We are privileged this evening to have with us two of the Gedolei Ador. First, from the Moetzes Gedolei HaTorah, Rosh Yeshiva Philadelphia, Rav Shmuel Kamenetsky. And we are absolutely delighted and privileged to have with us Rabbi Yisrael Belsky, Yeshiva of Torah V'das, who after a very difficult recovery has graced us this evening by coming here for this very chashuv cause. We wish him a continued refuah shalema and hope he will be with us on many other occasions. Unfortunately, Rav Aaron Feldman, the Rosh Yeshiva from the local Ner Yisrael, is recovering. Baruch Hashem, I just heard that he is being transferred from a New Jersey hospital to Sinai Hospital, but he will be unable to participate with us personally this evening. You have questions that you can, you have cards rather that you can submit questions on. And now I'm going to introduce Jan Loeb, who will serve as the head of the panel for the two Rosh Yeshiva. Jan.
Good evening, everybody. There are cards. I have a lot of them here. I don't think we'll be able to get to all your questions, but I will try my best to read them as quickly and as concisely as possible. The first question that I would like to address to the Philadelphia Rosh Yeshiva is, how does one balance teaching and expecting of girls basic Hilchos Tznius versus Minhagei Tznius? For example, it is my understanding that most poskim do not consider stockings a halachic requirement, yet many segments of the community have it as their minig. How should we teach this to a child, especially when the child may experience resentment towards the added limitation for innocent reasons such as the summer heat?
Tznius is something, a virtue that every school has a certain demand from the pupils. And the first thing is what is the demand of the school. That's the first. If there's any problems, you really have to go to the principal. Actually, it's not, we didn't come to Paskin and Shailes, what Tznius is. You know what Tznius is? And there are many madregas in Tznius, that's normal. But actually, what we have to teach our Talmidos is that Tznius, the way the school demands from them, has to be kept. In other words, they should keep the halachas of this school. And whatever the school demands, it's not fair that you'll come with a long skirt and then when you leave the school, after school you'll become a different person. A person has to be the same person 24 hours a day. And when the school demands of pupils to keep a certain degree of tznius, so that tznius has to be kept always. It's not fair for the school, and it's not fair for the Talmidos that they'll have different madregas and tznius. Because if a school demands that, so it's really the demand of every pupil that should behave the way the school demands from them. And I didn't go to measure skirts here, and we didn't go to Paskin Shailes about tznius. But every school has certain degree what they feel is provided for the community, for this school, so it has to be kept religiously. And I think that answers the Shaila.
Would the Torah ask Rashiva like to?
What Philadelphia Rosh Hashiva said is something that is the real reasonable approach. People ask me many times to wear and the collar, to wear the gear, to wear. I told them go ask them in the island of the market, and especially the Nile of the Mossad where your children go. They'll tell you exactly where they're responsible or all responsible, and they know what's too much and what's right. This has been going on for years and years. When someone tries to, display more of their body than the school allows, it's a problem. It's not just a problem in tznius. We're not here in this world to display ourselves to the public. But that's actually the thing to do. The knowledge of the girls' schools do a wonderful job. I haven't seen any deviation from a reasonable standard.
Is there ever a time when a Rebbe or Mora may answer a child's question with "your question is not appropriate," assuming the question was asked with derech eretz?
You really get to a problem that if you give the wrong answer, you embarrass the child. You tell them that they're not behaving properly, and it's a dangerous thing to embarrass the child, even in a private conversation between the Manayla and the child, between the Rebbe and the child. When the child does ask something that's not appropriate, so it could be explained to the child in ways which bring home the standards of behavior and thought which are appropriate for the Yiddish kid. And if a person doesn't know how precisely to do that, what words to use, so they should find some excuse to delay the answering of the question until the next day, and they consult with people who have a reputation for being very skillful at it. It's not, there's a danger in sort of depicting a child as being sort of a bad child. You tell it to them, they may just begin to say to themselves, if I'm a bad child, if I say inappropriate things, then maybe that's who I am. I just discovered my new self. and they'll go out and do things which are worse and worse.
How should a Rebbe deal with a Talmud of high school age who complains about his frum parents not living up to basic Torah standards? Conversely, how should a parent deal with a child who complains that his Rebbe is not acting with midos that one would expect from a Rebbe? The Philadelphia Rosh Yeshiva.
He's touching in the covet of his Rebbe or the covet of his parents. That's the first thing. So that, I think, it should be explained, that he has to be older than that to complain about that. Not about his Rebbe and not about his parents. Because many times, a child doesn't understand the situations and what happened, and they tend to complain many times. However, the child has to be spoken to and explained what is really happening. If there is a problem with the parents, I don't think that it's the teacher's place to speak about that. But I think you should convey to the principal that this child complained about that, and the principal should look into it. Because I don't think a teacher should undertake that. Because it remain chas v'sholom asayne. The parents will be always upset why I undertook that. And I think that's very important to make such a dividing the teacher with the parents, which is not good for the child. The child will suffer from it. So I think that the approach has to be that if there is complaint, you have to know what it is. You should listen to the Talmud, whatever he says. It's very important. He has to have a listening ear, that's for sure. And you have to know at the same time what is really bothering the child, what he's complaining about. But at the same time, I think a teacher, a Rebbe, should give it over to the Anola. And the Anola should handle that, because it's something that a Rebbe should not get involved in the parents and the child relationship. It's not healthy. Not healthy for the child, not healthy for the parents. They should feel he got it between us. But I think a principal is mechuyev to handle that. Whatever the problem is, that is the highest of a principle. I think it answers the question.
Just one little thing to add, which is included in what Rosh Yeshiva said, and there's sometimes imagined problems, and sometimes there are real problems, and it takes an expert eye, an older person, and a person who's not meeting with the child every day. But there are people who are very wise and very mature who can determine whether there's a real problem or not. It happens sometimes that the problems that the child speaks about are very serious problems. But it definitely is something for an expert, for a wise person to handle.
Should one set high goals that challenge children to grow but cause some amount of tension and risk of failure, or set lower goals that will almost certainly be met by children but will not spur personal growth?
Well, what does that mean to set goals? If you tell the child you must get 100 on the next test or else I'll be ashamed of you. You must do this and you must do that. That's not the way to set goals in Yechlam. You can set higher goals in a different way, by praising and encouraging the child when they do achieve something very, very special, and saying that what you just did shows that you're, a real, outstanding bocher, and use that types of approach to encourage a child to raise the bar, to raise the level of the standard. But not to be critical if they don't reach the top or if they don't reach even an expected goal. It's very difficult. It can be done once in a while, but it's extremely difficult for an average parent to go and to describe the child to himself as being an inferior child. What you're doing is telling the child that you're on the lower level, you're not equal to what's expected of a regular child. Those are sometimes the worst things in the world. They come out in terrible ways later on.
The rabbi said it very clearly. It is horrible to criticize a child, especially in front of somebody else, in front of another child, in front of a class, in front of other people, because our children are very understanding and very sensitive. And that's, we have to be most careful not to touch their dignity, their honor, their mitzvahs. That's very, very important.
Can we daven less, we're talking about in school, can we daven less to talk about tefillah more? All we are doing is a lot of kriya practice at best and wasting time at worst for the first 30 minutes or so of a day.
The question you're held like that, all we're doing is wasting the first 30 minutes of the day. It may be so and it may not be so. Someone should bring it to the attention of the Manal, which was spoken for. And he would see if it's truly a waste. Sometimes it is, sometimes it's treated as that. But it would be very kedai for a child, and even for an adult. Believe me, I say a shiur for adults who have grandchildren, and we just went through the Parashat Tefillah of the most common tefillahs, the first Rosh Hashanah and other things. And it's important for a person to know and be mindful in what he's davening, and put his heart and soul into it, and to understand it. But that, of course, doesn't part the adult from davening the full davening. But it should be, it's one of the biggest hills to climb, the biggest obstacles to overcome, is to be able to take a person who's used to, putting his mouth into automatic pilot and his mind rocked into some make-believe world, and that from the beginning of davening to the end, every single day for 30, 40 years, and all of a sudden tell him that he should be machav. There has to be some way to bring it home to older people as well as to younger people. Of course, davening has to be b'chol vavchem eze hi avodah shabalev. If you have a tefillah, it's not avodah shabalev, it's not davening, but to say that the child in the 6th grade is ready to daven, the main part of davening should do less than everybody else, and tell him that we're not going to daven so much. You're running into trouble. You may get into the habit of it, and the rest of his life only daven little parts of davening here and there. Somebody once said, but there's something that's worse than both of them. That's ma'at shaloi v'kavod.
I think the rabbi put it very well. To demand from children that they should daven the whole tefillah with kavanah is very unfair, because I have a yeshiva older bochur, and they also come to ask, what can I do to improve my tefillah, which is not an easy task. I tell them they should just concentrate for the next Chodesh, just a Mogen Avrom. They'll get used to it. It'll be easier for them to learn. Then another Chodesh, you start a little further, till Slachlon. In other words, to concentrate there and not to let any other thoughts in between. And slowly, when you learn and you have it more absorbed, it's easier to continue that way. And I think it's very profitable. But with young children, it's very hard to teach that. But however, you should teach them they should concentrate the first bracha. They'll think that they'll get used to it. They'll concentrate this bracha, then concentrate another bracha. Children have to understand that tefillah is so important that without tefillah you don't get anything. How can we be zeichet to anything we want? We have to be mispal tefillah. And the children understand that part. They can be zeichet to a new bicycle, only the mechaber and tefillah, they daven well. But sometimes the answer is no, they still don't get. But they have to realize that whatever they need, they have to ask the Rebbeinu Shalom. Without asking, that is tefillah. I mean, to realize that anything you want, you have to come to the Rebbeinu Shalom to ask. He's the Balach Chayles. He's the one that can help you and he give you whatever you want. And of course, the parents have to have the money for it. That he also has to be mispal. Has to realize that too. Mispal for parents. The same very important that for parents and for Rabbeim to be mispal for their children and their talmidim. The same as a doctor machuyev to mispal for his patients. So is a father and a rebbe machuyev to mispal for their talmidim, for their children, which is very important. And with time they get used to it. The little kavanah is also the Ma'aber kavanah. The Abba Shlev Kavanah, as I should have said before.
Can we invite an off-the-derech relative in their 20s to a home if they may drive on Shabbos? They were invited for the entire Shabbos but chose to drive on Shabbos. There may be young children at the Shabbos table. Would it make a difference if there are only adults at the Shabbos table who know the situation? Philadelphia.
Well, it's an old machlekes amongst the people that are Mekara people. They say that with one Shabbos you can rat a person for his entire life. But it's a question whether you're allowed to do that. Actually, you're supposed to invite him. You have to tell him that we have a bed for you. We can stay over the whole Shabbos, and we'll treat you nicely over the whole Shabbos. Whether they come in themselves, it's very hard to tell them not to come. It wouldn't help you, they'll come anyway if they're invited. But actually, we should invite them, that we know that they have to travel. Is a shayla from Lufnei Iba, and you're not allowed to do that. So that's only a terrace that you say that to them you'll be Mekarav, because actually you're inviting him and he's coming to you because on your invitation. So you have to, whenever invite somebody, you have to tell him that he's invited, but I would prefer that to stay in my house. Otherwise you walk. But to come with a car, and you tell them maybe they're nice, it's a guest that you want to invite, and tell them you come with a car. What do my children think of me? What will they say that my guest came with a car on Shabbos? They'll be embarrassed themselves. So, I mean, people understand that, and it's very problematic to invite somebody. You invite them in the wilderness when nobody's around, perhaps maybe it would be a heta. You have to look for a rope to be mattered, to give you a heta for that.
I said monthly same words on hundreds of times. That's the basic issue.
My son is in yeshiva. He is 19. He loves to learn, but I don't think he has a future in chinuch. All his role models, rebbeim mentors, have just learned and do not seem to worry about parnasa. I worry about his entering adulthood without any skills. What do you suggest?
There's nothing wrong with teaching someone skills and with teaching him parnasa. That's not the problem. The problem is when someone goes straight through from kindergarten to college to work, he never was toying once in his lifetime the time of learning and immersing himself in Torah. Everyone should be given that opportunity to have at least a year or two or more to be able to learn. It's recognized all over, even by people who are a little far from Torah. But for some reason, it's an accepted thing today to give a high school graduate a chance to go to their throat and be in a yeshiva for a year, a couple of years. That experience, which is sometimes denied to the child by well-meaning true parents who somehow feel desperate about the another of the child, and until he's ready to go out and earn, a full living wage, they feel that they haven't done their duty to him. They haven't brought him up. They have this chayvus to make sure that the child is able to go out into the world. But they don't have no chayvus they have no reshus, actually, to deprive him of the ability and the chance to immerse himself and to taste what Torah is. Not what partial Torah is, partial study, partial this, partial that. That's very good, it's important, but up to a certain stage. And after that, they should be given the opportunity to experience and put their whole life into Torah. Eventually, if they learn a skill, what could possibly be wrong with learning a skill? There's nothing wrong with it, unless like it used to be with the colleges or very, very wrong places to go. They taught days classes, there was social life over there, there were all kinds of marshalom. Today there are opportunities to get to practice, but how far we can to do complete, to look at it. I once told a parent years ago when I was younger, today I wouldn't say such things, but I told them that what you remind me of is a farmer whose cow gave birth to a calf. And he spent hours and hours seeing that the calf nurses by its mother. Then he fed the calf. He fed the calf wheat, grain and feed, and then he finally let it out, go out and graze, and this and that, and struggled. And finally, when the calf gave its own first bucket of milk, so he said, jetzt hat sich geläumt die ganze Arbeit. Now the calf produced some milk. That's how you look at a child. You look at a child as a cow that's here in this world for one single purpose, to be milk. A bocher should be taught and should experience what it means to learn but I should have no training. Every single person should have no skills. Nobody has that principle, and it shouldn't be. But it has to be very carefully measured. And like was said before many times, the person should have consultation with Talmid Chacham. Every person should have their Rebbe. Every person should have a guide. Not that I was in shul and think that he's smarter than the Rav or everybody else. But people need guidance. Adults, it's a
The rabbi explained it very well. But I want to share with you a story that, as Baltimoreans, you may appreciate it. A father came to Rabbi Tendler, Zechariah Bracha, who was the Menayel in the yeshiva, and he complained. He said that he trained his son and he had hoped that after high school he'll go to college. And now the son says he doesn't want to go to college. So the Rabbi Tendler told him, said, "You mean we told him not to go to college? We'll call his Rebbe." He called his Rebbe and he asked his Rebbe, "Did you ever speak against college?" No, he never spoke against college. So what happened? Why did they want? He said perhaps because in the secular department they didn't produce such a Talmud that he would want to go to school and want to go to college. As in the yeshiva in New York, when the Machuta of my graduated school, maybe I should tell you with the name, so the mathematics teacher cried. He said, "You mean he's not going to college?" He cried, always cried. He says he's a product that mathematics would appreciate him. And he cried, he didn't want to go to school. Anyway, when he called the secular teacher, he told them that they have to speak to the secular teacher. They should produce a Talmud that would want to go to school right away. But the Rebbe said he never spoke against college, so the parents were shocked. What happened to our child? We had hoped that after 4 years in yeshiva, he's going to go to college, and didn't want to go to college. So he told them, just gave him a geschmack in learning, that he doesn't want to go to school now. Perhaps maybe later in life, if he'll need to go to school, he'll probably go to school. But at the moment, he wants to learn. So give him that opportunity, exactly what the Oshua just said before. He had given an opportunity that he can be at sloch in learning. What will be later in life? So he'll decide a little bit later in life. It's true, when he graduates at 18, but at the age of 20, he has to have a certain direction. And every student of ours has a direction, what he thinks in his mind. That he'll I don't think anyone thinks he'll get a Reich Shidach and wouldn't have to go to school. I don't think so. That's a double Shein Matzi. It happens sometimes, but you can't say that this is their mind. So the Baruch Hashem have minds and they want to develop themselves in Torah, Shamayim, and it's a preparation for life also. The entire life will be a different life they have learned a few years. Even if they go to school later and they become a lawyer, become a doctor, whatever they become. But you should know that absorbing Torah, Yerushalayim, Aliyah and Torah is something for life, it's forever. So it's a good investment. That's all I have to say.
Given the fact that it is very difficult to protect and insulate our children from pritzus that is all around us, how do we as parents change our ways of chinuch to build and raise children that will have the tools to withstand the Yetzer Hara that is increasing all the time? Philadelphia Rashi.
That's a hard one. It's really hard. When I come to Ner Yisrael, in their complex, and I said every time I speak, it's their mamish. They're not in the world. They don't see the boards in the street. They come from school straight back into home, and they're in a sheltered environment. That's where they are. And really, when Jews were sheltered in their own complex, in their own vicinity, it was much more protected than today. Today we have buses, we have whatever, we have the street, but you see all kinds of shmutz, all kinds of distractions, and that's messiahs. So what we have to do is only our home should be the guard. Our home should be that's our protection. Our protection is the home. The Zohar asked the Kasha, how was Noach Nitzel? There was a Mabel in the world. How was it Nitzel? So the answer, the Teres, it says, they were in the world by themselves. They were on a table. So the Chazon Ish said that the table, our table is being around the Bismillah, around the Yeshiva, that's our table. That's how we become Nitzel. Otherwise we're dragged into in the stream. We know what the stream is nowadays, because after the Chum on the slide, we dragged along. So our avodah is to see that our home should be so pure and so nice that this should be a distraction. It should be on ourselves, and the table ourselves. That's our table. Hashem should help us.
I just want to emphasize one of the points, the idea of isolation is so important. The entire Bastoi, the Jewish family, should sort of disengage themselves from the rest of the world. Many times they don't do that. They bring the rest of the world in through magazines and catalogs and newspapers, through talk of the rest of the world at the table, at the Shabbos table, through the modern electronic devices that bring all the kilkel of Stam and Amor of the rest of the world into the home. The home should be an ear miklot. The Prophet says in Yeshaya, what should a person do when Mashiach didn't come yet and the world is still a dangerous place to be in? So he said, close the door, hide. A person should hide from the world. You can't get into the world and expect lisum to happen, that the world should have no effect. A man came over to me recently, and I've heard this many times. What should I do? I have to go to Manhattan. I have to work. I have to walk into the streets of Manhattan. You see, Stam and Moira, Admo, Tvoy, and many more. The people think you stop realizing that it's a mental illness and it's abnormal for somebody to walk out and try to uncover as much of the body as possible without getting arrested. And they put themselves on display. And Mayasa Ben Shlayachto. People have to know to isolate themselves. Keep your eyes down. Don't look to the right. Don't look to the left. Be like the horse who has blinders and around his eyes. And then go home and shut the door. Go to this medrash. Make sure that life is protected. The yuchnis of life is pure to the extent that you're able to do it. If you succeed in isolating yourself from the rest of the world, it's totally.
If we see our Talmidim, ages 7 to 10, playing ball on Shabbos, should we say anything?
And it says that you're talking, of course, in a place where you could carry it.
There's an Erev.
Yeah. But there's different days in Shulchan Aruch. We should read the Marshal says that it's also that Mishchat Kader is booked in, and it's also on Shabbos. And there are Midrashim that say, why was the city of Beitar and Chorif? Because they played ball on Shabbos. It's definitely not a Shabbos activity. And there are a lot of other people that go out into the street and play ball and walk around and the Shabbos afternoon, dressed for basketball. It's turning Shabbos into Chol. Shabbos and Chol have to be two different things. There can't be a mixture. If you spoke before about the rest of the world, shouldn't be mixed into the Yiddish world. And Shabbos shouldn't be mixed with Chol. Shabbos is Shabbos, and the minute Shabbos is over, you make your Abdullah and you say, Mamdu, there should be a heftel. If everything is done on Shabbos, that's done with Chol. So where's the heftel? You should make Abdullah in the middle of the afternoon. You can't allow. I remember once somebody published a book and someone came to me to complain. It's not in the spirit of the Sabbath to do this and to do that. And he said, who is this author of this book to talk about the spirit? You should copy what it says in Shulchan Aruch and not add a word to it. But that's not true. The spirit of Shabbos is very, very important to maintain throughout Shabbos from beginning to end. And every Yid who's Zochel, you have to do it the way which is sometimes very difficult because the child will say, all my friends do it. Why should I be different than them? Why should I be super like? The problem is like any problem. You have to work very skillfully and very carefully. And we said before, not to insult the child, not to difficult. But on the other hand, they should know what Shabbos is. Maybe tell them stories, make an oinik Shabbos for your own family, and play games that are appropriate to play, like they do in the Pirchei and other places. A lot of work has to do.
I was informed that the Rabbanim from Baltimore asked us to play ball outside. So I think that should be known, since it's a Nabitos question. They asked us to play ball. So later we have to obey this dictum that Rabbanim asked us.
Sometimes it's the only answer to the question.
And the last question, given to me by Rabbi Milstein, was we heard on the tape the Rosh Yeshivas of previous generations talking about Chinuch Atzmai. Is Chinuch Atzmai today Nogea as it was 20 years ago?
Chinuch Atzmai today is 1,000-fold more important than it was then. It began with a very small number of Talmidim. And I must share with you the story that when Chinuch Atzmai started, and Abba Zecher Tzadik Levracha was just his Yortzeit, when two yonim, first someone asked him if he has a doctor, what should he give? So and it was the yeshiva, he has his kollel and yeshiva he had already. He said to give it to Chinuch Atzmai. That's a Kol Yisrael institution that saves nefashos and mekabel Torah. Most of the Torah in Eretz Yisrael come from the Chinuch Atzmai's Botei Chinuch. So that should be known. But it was the beginning when it started off and there was a crisis, there was no money. So Abba Zecher Tzadik Levracha, the Shul from Lakewood, he called the Krishnas Rebbe. I didn't want to say who it is, but you should know the Krishnas Rebbe. They were very close and very friendly. He called him, he said, it's very massive. So he told him, the Benach Kohn will come to me. The Benach Kohn was the Maaseh from Chinuch Atzmai. He came to the Rebbe, and the Rebbe, when he came, he says, as the Rebbe is wearing a tutel, a tutel means a bag, a big paper bag. And it was between Rosh Hashanah and Kippur, and the Rebbe had Pidyonos, from Rebbe Pidyonos at the time. He didn't open up, he didn't look at anything. He took all the money that came in, and he just put it in the bag. He told them, take it to the office, count what it is, and little Ratzma Chinuch Atzmai. I mean, that was the Mesiras of Rabbanim, that they felt that this is a Yisrael Zikr, a Chinuch that was created by Gedolei Yisrael with that intention to bring the best of Kol Yisrael to Torah. And the Atzmocha is, at that time, was like 5,000 children. Today, over 100,000 children learn in Chinuch Atzmai Meises. So the Chiyuv is so much greater than it used to be before. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I'll tell you also a little story. I was once a Bochri in the yeshiva in Spring Valley, Bishman Shelim. Somebody said, Motzei Shabbos, their Baron is going to call the whole yeshiva to come to the Motzei Shabbos session of the Aguda convention that took place in Lakewood. One time that the convention was in Lakewood. So a couple of my chaverim, we got together, we got a car, and we drove to Lakewood. We came just at the beginning of Baran's Rosh. Very, very memorable. And someone told me, you want to stay overnight? The Sunday morning session is ancient about what's going to be. It's three parts. The first part is Rabban will say a shir. The second part, Moshe will say a shir. The third part, will will say a shir. That's the entire convention in the morning till lunchtime. So I stayed there and I listened to the shir. And then came lunch. And the Baron got up to say an appeal for Chinuch Atzmai. So now listen to something extraordinary. He got up and he said that he was supposed to speak about Chinuch Atzmai, but he's not going to speak about Chinuch Atzmai because Rabbi Yaakov Kamenetsky, he did nefesh, had asked to speak instead of him. There was a shtickle in shock. Rabbi Yaakov asked the Baron shouldn't speak, and he wants to speak. He said like this. The gist of what he said was, first he told the story about Rabbi Yonah. Rabbi Yonah wrote a sefer, which is Shara Tshuva. We call it Rabbi Yonah, the sefer. Nobody calls it Shara Tshuva. And that has the whole life's formula and pattern for people who want to do tshuva, anything, big things, small things. One of the most frequently learned form, especially around Elul and Sefer Tshuva. And why did he write this sefer? He said that years before he had his Rebbe was Rav Shlomo Nahor, the Rebbe of Rabbi Yehuda. And Rav Shlomo Nahor had a tremendous battle, sort of, with the Rambam. The Rambam published the Hilchos Yisrael Torah and other halachas that Rav Shlomo Nahor felt were inappropriate because he said certain things from Chachmei U'Masayilom and he quoted certain things, and they were very sharply critical of the Rambam. And Rabbi Yonah being a Talmud of Rav Shlomo Nahor, so he came and he led the battle. He was the biggest Talmud by far, all the Talmuds of Rav Shlomo Nahor. And he led the battle. Later, he thought over the matter and he realized that it was the Rambam's ksavim, including whatever they criticized, it was these ksavim that was Matzal Klal Yisrael. It brought back tens of thousands of people to Torah, to Tshuva. It opened up for them the Dias HaTorah in a way that was just miraculous. And Rabbi Yehuda decided that he wants to have Charotah and do Tshuva on his criticism of the Rambam. Okay. So he felt he has to go to Eretz Yisrael and be mushtatech on the kever of the Rambam. Rabbi Yaakov didn't know whether he actually made it to Eretz Yisrael. I don't think anybody knows precisely the details. But one thing he said was, which he writes to the last of the 20 Yesodis of Tshuva, in the first Shara of Shara Tshuva, he writes that in order to do a full tshuva, you have to be machzer ozes to tshuva. That's a chiluk, that's a prat in Hilchos tshuva. And therefore he wrote this sefer to Mekayim to bring others to tshuva. He felt that the only way you could bring others to tshuva is by presenting them with a plan, a program for doing tshuva the right way. And he wrote as one of the treasures of Klal Yisrael, of course, is the Shara Tshuva. Then all this sounded so interesting. You'll hear this as things that I never heard before or since. But Rabbi Yaakov said that this was exactly what happened. Then Rabbi Yaakov said that many years ago I had a big machlokes with Rabbi. I held that Yeshiva Light should raise money for Tashbar. At that time, Tashbar was an organization that pooled all the different yeshivas that were Kula Kodesh, and it was a fund for supporting all the yeshivas. They did a magnificent job. And today, every yeshiva is, looks for themselves, but at that time was the birth of the Kehilim and the Eretz Yisrael, and the yeshivas were on the run. And so an organization combining the efforts of all the Chadorim was called Tashbar. And then there was Chinuch Atzmai. And he felt that B'nai Torah should raise money for Tashbar, and Baal Basim should raise money for Chinuch Atzmai. And the thinking was that Chinuch Atzmai is going to turn out Baal Basim, and Tashbar is going to turn out B'nai Torah. So B'nai Torah should raise for Tashbar. This is to put it very briefly. He said he just came back not long before this from a trip to Eretz Yisrael. Rabbi said he traveled all over Eretz Yisrael. And when he came back, he saw the different types of places, the cities, the villages, the small yeshuva, the big yeshuva, and he studied the yeshuva in Eretz Yisrael. So it's just interesting that when he came back, there were people to greet him at the airport, and so he asked him, "Was it Rosh Hashiva in Eretz Yisrael?" His response is so classic, it rings in my ears. He said, that's all, just 4 words. But there he said, he said that he discovered something that he didn't realize before, that the existence of the Kehillah, of the whole tzibur in Eretz Yisrael, is only because of Chinuch Atzmai. If we were Saimach on the Chadorim and the Yeshivas HaKdoshes, so they would be isolated. There would be small groups of people who would be crushed under the attacks of the Freie Chofshe, who they didn't attack any less recently than they did before. In fact, they started talking about drafting yeshiva like right now. Right now it's going on. It's not that they started and they finished. They're in the middle of it. And they'll attack the yeshivas, the Advias HaGoel, which we hope will be immediately so. But this battle is constant. But he said what gave Klal Yisrael, what gives it, what Surah combines the entire Fruva Kehillah, through the Kehillah of those who learn Torah as one, and gives it the tzura of a Klal Yisrael effort is Chinuch Atzmai. He saw that in the little villages, in the big ones. He saw that in the cities, wherever there was Chinuch Atzmai. He saw that the tzura of the Torah tzibur was created primarily by Chinuch Atzmai. Therefore, he feels that he made a big mistake in what he was mechulik with Rabbi, and he would so much want to be able to write a sefer like Rabbi. He only wrote that he could be able to do a full tshuva on what he was mechulik with Rabbi. It was the most astounding and amazing drasha that you could ever hear in your life, and I think those words are still absolutely alive today and as meaningful as they ever were.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much to Rosh Yeshivas for your very insightful answers and responses. I now would like to ask Rav Yisachar Friend to give us some divrei chizuk on behalf of Chinuch Atzmai.
Rishus the Rosh Yeshiva, Ron Rabban Rabbeisai. After the Holocaust, a Bacher who had learned in yeshivas in Europe made his way to Eretz Yisrael. And he came to Ponevezh. And he came into the Ponevezh Rov, and he wanted to be accepted into the Panovich Yeshiva. So the Panovich Rav asked him, what did he learn before the war? He wanted to see what he knew. So he said the last thing he learned before the war, before he was in the concentration camps, he learned Perek Elu Trefus. Elu Trefus is a very difficult technical perek that deals with the anatomy of a cow. Very difficult perek. So the Panovich Rav asked him a few questions about Elu Trefus, and the Bocher answered him. So the Chazon Ish took this Bocher by the hand, and he started running through the streets of Bnei Brak, which in those days was not nearly what Bnei Brak is today. And he took the Bocher to the Chazon Ish. And he told the Chazon Ish, Hadohu Dichsiv, this Bocher is a living example of the Pasuk, V'hoya ki simsena Isai Rose Rabbos B'tzaros. The Klal Yisrael will be afflicted with Geferlich Atzaros, V'onsa Hashir Azeis Lefanav La'ed, Ki Loisi Shakach Mi Pizarei. That Rebbeinu Shalom promised, Ki Loisi Shakach Mi Pizarei, terror will never be forgotten. And here's a Bocher was a Duchgemach. He went through the Holocaust, and he still remembers Elu Trefus. Ki Loisi Shakach Mi Pizarei. He was a living embodiment of that promise that the Torah made. But there's a corollary to that story, also with the Panovich Rav. And that is that after the war, there was an asif in Eretz Yisrael in order to try to rebuild Torah in Eretz Yisrael. And the Panovich Rav got up at that asifa and he said, Ki lo yisi shakach mi pizara is not only a promise from the Rebbeinu Shalom, but it's a challenge to Klal Yisrael. And the B'chol Dor V'Dor, every Yid is mechuyev to see to it that Ki lo yisi shakach mi pizara, that Torah shouldn't be forgotten. And therefore, we cannot sit by and just sit back and hope the Torah will be forgotten. It's our achrayus. The Rebbeinu Shalom wants from us, he demands from us that we have to do something, and therefore we have to rebuild Torah. And there's ample historical precedent throughout the Dairis. Yidden have felt this achrayus that they have to make sure the Torah isn't forgotten. Just to cite one Gemara, famous Gemara, the famous Gemara with Reb Chia, that Reb Chia said, I'm going to make sure the Torah isn't forgotten. And the Gemara says that Reb Chia, he planted flax and he made nets and he caught the deer and he skinned the deer and he took the deer and he made the hides and he wrote Mishnah and he wrote Gemara and he taught it to children, taught to other children. Because Reb Chia felt this achrayus, like we all have to feel, that it's our personal responsibility to make sure that Torah isn't forgotten. And that is what motivated the Gedolim of yesteryear, which we saw. And to see some of the people that we knew Rav Pam, we knew Rav Gister, Zichronim Levracha, most of us, I know we knew Rav Shach, but to see them talking to us is chilling. But they understood, they had the foresight that what was at stake in Eretz Yisrael after the war and by the Hakamas HaMedina was nothing less than the face of what Eretz Yisrael would look like. And if they didn't do something about Torah Chinuch in Eretz Yisrael, the country would have an entirely different look. And what Eretz Yisrael is today and the way it is, and the thousands of young light learning in Kailam and the Svarim that are produced and the children that are learning in Torah, that's because they had the foresight, the Vita Cook, to say if we don't do something, Eretz Yisrael is going to be a wasteland. The Torah Vadas Rosh Yeshiva mentioned an Aguda convention that he went to. I remember the first Aguda convention that I went to. Must be 25 years ago. And the convention was held at some hotel in the Catskills, a Catskill hotel that had seen its better years 20 years before they got there. It was way past its prime. And Rav Pam Zichron Livrocha was scheduled to speak in Shalosh Shudas. And he gets up to speak in Shalosh Shudas, and the lights go out. And the room was dark. And Rav Pam even was supposed to speak about whatever he decided he's going to speak about Chinuch Atzmai. He took the opportunity to speak about Chinuch Atzmai. I'll never forget that drasha. For several reasons. I don't think Rav Pam had notes in front of him, and I don't think he had a sefer in front of him. And even if he did, it wouldn't have made a difference because it was too dark to read. And Rav Pam gets up and he recites Baal Peh, a kapitel from Omais, from the Navi Omais. And he quoted the posik, "V'anoichi hishmareti es ha'omer b'pnei asher k'geiv ha'rozim gafai." That the Rebbeinu Shem tells Klal Yisrael through the mouth of Omais HaNavi, what did I do for you? I took care of the Amoiri. V'anoichi aleisi eschem eretz Mitzrayim, v'olech eschem b'midbar b'oim shana. I took you out of Mitzrayim. I took care of you in the desert. And I gave you good kinder, children that were supposed to be Nevi'im, children were supposed to be Nazirim. And you corrupted your children. And you took these Heilige children that were Nazirim and you gave them wine. And you told the Nevi'im not to be Menabe. And you corrupted and you perverted and you ruined your children. That was Rav Pam's drasha. Two things made a Meshuna decoration at that time. That Rav Pam said a kapitel in Omais like I say Ashvei. And I was embarrassed. Because I never looked in an Omais. And then and there I decided that I have to learn Tanakh. And I came back and I started with a small group of Balabatim. We started to learn Tanakh once a week. We're holding by the last Sefer of Tanakh 25 years later. But the other thing that made a reishim on me is the passion that Rav Pam spoke about Yiddish kinder and chinuch in Eretz Yisrael. And the palpable sense of pain that Rav Pam felt. And now that's what's happening in Eretz Yisrael. Atashkuas and Azir Miyoyin. They're ruining the children. They're being oiker from them and Nishmas Yisrael. That Lomi Boy, that they don't know what Omais is, they don't know what Kriyashma is. And how pained he was. How visibly pained he was. And I remember him chiding the Olam there. And saying to them that people, fathers come to him, come to Rabbeim, and they cry. They cry that their sons don't know what Taisvis, or they don't open the Sefer on Shabbos, what's going to be with their sons. And was mit the Kinder in Eretz Yisrael? Your kid doesn't know what Taisvis, it's a tragedy. And a child in Eretz Yisrael doesn't know who Yeshai is. That doesn't bother us. Because that's an Adam Gadol. An Adam Gadol, that's the mark of an Adam Gadol. To feel a sense of achrayus, not only for you or your family, but for Klal Yisrael. Rishim Shkop, in his Hakdama to the Shari Yosher, writes a beautiful Hakdama. He says, Apshatna Mishnah Novis, Hu hayoymer mein ani mili, Ukshanim alatzmi moani. So Shimon said the pshat in that Mishnah is that a person has to worry about himself. But if all a person is his ani, me, myself, and I, then moani. Then was bist du? Reb Shimon writes over there, V'ha'ish ha'haylech al pi darki ha'tayra. A mensch which is an Adam Gadol, the mark of an Adam Gadol. Ha'ani shaloi kaila is kol am Yisrael. My ani is not me, not just me, it's not my family, it's not my neighborhood, it's Klal Yisrael. That's a Adam Gadol. A Baron, we just marked the 50th yahrzeit of our Baron Kafeh Zevet Tzadik Levroch. Baron was nifter before the year before I came to yeshiva. When I got to yeshiva, so I never knew Baron, never heard till I was in yeshiva. Never heard a shir about Baron. But one of my first impressions of Baron Kotler was a little pamphlet that they passed out in those years about Chinuch Atzmai. And there's a picture of a Baron standing like this, and I still remember the quote. Yes, we have a deficit. We could have 50,000 more children. And that stuck with me for close to 50 years. The passion. Like the Philadelphia Rosh Yeshiva said, how lahu to, how passionate, how ibergegeven he was for Chinuch Atzmai. And those of you, the Ner Yisrael old timers, will remember how the Rosh Yeshiva Zatzal instituted that he led, and we do this on Hayom Hazeh, that Bachram leave this man early for Pesach, not to collect for our yeshiva, but to go collect for Chinuch Atzmai. And that is how, like Rav Pam mentioned, that's how Yahud came into existence. And the Rosh Yeshiva was very makbid on Bittul Torah, but to send away a good part of the yeshiva before Pesach just to collect. You know, I can't remember any other occasion that a non-rabbinic figure spoke to the Bachram in the yeshiva, with one exception. Stephen Klein. Stephen Klein was a makur of a Baron, and he was the chairman of Chinuch Atzmai. He was a balabos. He was the head of Barton's. If you're old enough, the name Barton's will still bring back fond memories.
Sweet.
But he spoke to the yeshiva about Chinuch Atzmai. Because Rav Aaron and the Rosh Yeshiva and Rav Pam Uda Imahu were Gedolei Yisrael. And a Gedolei Yisrael thinks about Klal Yisrael. And so do we. And I saw last week a medrash on last week's parsha. Vayechrad Yitzchak Harada Gedola Adma'id. Yitzchak trembled. Rav Levi b'shem Rabbi Chama Rab Chanina Shtei Harada Ischarad Yitzchak. 2 times we find that Yitzchak was frightened, he trembled. Achas al gabi ha-mizbeach. One when he was on the Mizbeach about to be shechted by Avram, va'ata kishenichnas Esav. And when Esav came into him after Yaakov got the bracha, zok the medrash, ve'ein ato yedeya eze mehen gedayla. Which is a bigger fright? The fright of Yitzchak on the Mizbeach, or the fright of Yitzchak realizing that he almost gave the brachas to the wrong person? Which is a greater fright? Ela eza mehem gedayla ela mima sha'at kairei kan gedayla ad ma'id. But by here, by Yitzchak and by Yaakov and Esav, state charoda gedayla ad ma'id. Ata yedeh shezu gedayla. That's a aggressor of fright. What's the Medrash trying to tell us? L'may nafkimi. This was greater. That was greater. L'may nafkimi. What's the lesson? It could be that the lesson that the Medrash is trying to tell us is Yitzchak was afraid twice in his life. One time he's about to lose his life. He's about to be shechted. That's frightful. And one time he realizes that he may have done something that would have affected negatively Klal Yisrael la'olam v'ed. Was is aggressor of pachad? Your own life or the future of Klal Yisrael? Zot the Medrash. That to Yitzchak was aggressor of pachad. I mean, to us, what could be more frightful than losing our lives? Or but to Yitzchak, from the Avos, there's something scarier than losing your life. And that is Klal Yisrael. Because an Adam Gadol war is about Klal Yisrael. And when Chazal tell us that a person has to say, Mosai Yagia Maisai Lamaisa Avram Yitzchak v'Yankiv, that we all have to ask ourselves and challenge ourselves, when will we come close to the Maisim of the Avos? That's what they're asking us. Trach nicht nur wegen sich. Don't only think about ourselves. Tracht wegen Klal Yisrael. Think about Klal Yisrael. And from those little acorns that the Gedolim planted 60 years ago, 65 years ago, have the mighty oaks that are now in Eretz Yisrael have grown. In 1959, according to the statistics of the Israeli government, 6.6% of Israeli children were in Haredi schools. In 2006, there were 22% of Israeli children in Haredi schools. By government estimates, by the end of 2012, 33% of all Jewish children in Eretz Yisrael will be in Haredi Frum schools. That's an amazing statistic. You know, Rabbi Milstein asked the question, do we still need Chinuch Atzmai? And haven't we grown out of it? Haven't we graduated? You know, the Miriam Galite and the Brisker Galite, they're not sending their children to Chinuch Atzmai schools. But there are Miriam Galite and Brisker Galite because there was once Chinuch Atzmai schools. And in a rising tide, all boats rise. But when we hear about the Kirov organization in Eretz Yisrael, the Lev Lachim and the Pilims, and all these organizations, you know where these kids wind up? They wind up in Chinuch Atzmai schools. And where do they put these kids? They make them from Very good. Now what? Lev Lachem doesn't have a school system. Pilim doesn't have a school system. They have to put them in Chinuch Atzmai schools. I mean, I'm not a frequenter of Eretz Yisrael. I can count the times on one hand that I've been to Eretz Yisrael. But one time I went to Eretz Yisrael for Lev Lachem. They took me around to different schools in different little shtetlach. I asked, what kind of school is this? This is a Chinuch Atzmai school. You know those words of Baron Kotler. Yes, we have a deficit. We could have 50,000 more children. Those words are negea today as they were then. Yes, we have a deficit. We could have 66% of Haredi children in Haredi schools. We could have 99%. But that's only going to happen one way. And I'm not very good at this. But this is where you got to write the checks. That's what we're here for. It was wonderful to hear the insights of the Roshei Yeshivas on Chinuch and the tircha that they went to come here. It's all fine and good. But this is not a Torah Masorah session. This is a Chinuch Atzmai session. This is a fundraising event. And now we have to step up to the plate. And I'm not one to tell people how much to give. But everybody should give something. Take out your checkbook and write a check. So that we have a partial answer to the taina of Ano Avdina to the Mishtachach Torah Yisrael.
So, said before that the Rosh Hashiva, Rav Aaron Feldman, is now recuperating at Sinai Hospital, and he has graciously agreed to speak from his hospital bed with a hookup. And now introduce Rav Aaron Feldman, Shalita, the Rosh Hashiva of Ner Yisrael.
Good evening, everyone. I'm sorry that I'm late to attend in person. It's later this afternoon. This morning we were talking about possibilities that I might be able to attend. But the discharge from the hospital in New Jersey was a little too long, and I'm sorry. At least I'll be able to join with you by telephone. It's a time of a personal issue for me. I got out of hospital today, and suspicious that this is also a time of a meeting like we started the Chinuch Atzmai, which is the issue of recalling flood. The issue, especially now, why we need so much of the issue, is to not issue a problem of the future of the flood. And if no one does such an extensive job in Eretz Yisrael, like Chinuch Atzmai, and I visited many schools in Eretz Yisrael, they have changed the face of many communities and deserve the support of Yosef and the local nuance that has to be the community that takes precedence over a near-fall. Because it deals with the training and with the children who go astray and like getting shuli. So it's something which it's a wonderful source to be shot with. You and I hope that you open up your heart and your pockets to support this unbelievably great project of doing 70,000 children to go to school to turn up. But it's local benches all over